In this video, I want to show you how you can create simple invoices using Report Builder in order to create paginated reports in Power BI. We're going to go through the basics of how you can import your data, how to format your pages, and how you can add parameters so that you can select your customers and generate individual unique invoices for them. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So I covered paginated reports recently, and it got a lot of attention, and I got a lot of requests to cover paginated reports some more. So today I want to do that. However, instead of going through the basics of everything with regards to the report builder and paginated reports, I want it to be a bit more practical. So today we're going to go through a real life scenario of creating invoices for your customers coming from a database. So we have a database that I have. So we have a local database for our Northwind traders installed in my machine, and that's what we're going to use to create our invoices. In this case, we already have a bunch of data in tables or in the database. We just want to be able to create and generate invoices in a printable format so we can print them off and send them to our customers. And this kind of requirement is where paginated reports really shine. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to try and build today. So this is what the report needs to look like in the report builder. So you have the parameter here that lets you select the customer that you want to look at. So if we select one and we hit view report, you will see that the invoice updates by itself automatically. It updates the invoice number, which needs to come from the database, as well as the dates for that invoice, our information, and the customer information as well. So their address. And here at the bottom is the invoice list. So all of the items that we're invoicing, the breakdown, as well as the total at the bottom here, as well as some bank information that we might want to include for them to pay into. So this is a typical invoice that you might want to build. It might look a little bit different, but the formatting is not too important. It's to build the kind of elements that are more important, specifically the dynamic elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an empty one. So we're going to start by opening up Report Builder, which if you haven't installed it yet, it's easily available, and it's now available for pro users as well. So think of Report Builder as kind of the Power BI desktop version, but for paginated reports. So it's a software that you need to install in your local machine in order for you to build paginated reports. If you don't know how to get started with Report Builder and paginated reports in general, I did cover it in that previous video that I mentioned earlier. So check it out if you want to start there. But I think you should be able to just follow along with me in this video as long as you install the Report Builder. So here we are in the Report Builder, and we have an empty report here. We have nothing in the page here except this execution time expression. So if you hit run, you will just be shown an empty report with just the time and date of when I'm running this report as of. So we don't really need that. We're going to remove that later. But the first thing that you need to do in the Report Builder is to import your data source. So this is where your data sets will come from. And to do that, it's actually pretty simple. So you're going to go to data source here and hit add data source. Now we're going to name this one Northwind. Keep it simple here. And you can create and choose the connection type here. So our data comes from a SQL server, so we'll leave it as it is. However, if you don't have a database to tap into and it's just an Excel file, you can just simply copy and paste that data directly into your Report Builder to report off of it. And for that option, you'll need to just use enter data. It's super simple, but in the future, I'll try to cover how you can do that quite easily. So here you can type the connection string, or what I prefer to do is just hit the build here. And then we're going to type localhost. That's because it's in my local database. And from here, we're going to choose Northwind because this is the database where our data tables are. And just make sure your connection is okay. So just test connection. If that says it's succeeded, then you're pretty much good to go. And we'll just hit OK. So now you've imported your very first data source into the Report Builder. Next, we'll bring in a few tables and columns from this data source. So for an invoice, we need, some order information, obviously, and we need the customer information because we're going to build the invoices to them. So we're going to do that from the dataset here. So we're going to hit add dataset. We're gonna name this one. First of all, we're just gonna compile the one for orders. We're gonna choose the Northwind data source that we have just created. And then from here, you can type your own SQL query if you're familiar with it. However, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually it's much more simpler if you click the query designer here at the bottom. It will just give you a UI to work with, essentially, to build your SQL statements. So let's have a look at the tables that we have available for us. So we have a few things here that we need to get. So we need the category name, for example, because we want to group, or rather I want to group my products by categories. I want to show the product name. I need the unit price. Well, we're going to get the unit price and quantity from the orders. We need customer ID because we need to link that back to the parameter. I will show you why we need that later. And then on the order details, we need, what do we need? We need the order ID, the unit price, quantity. Let me just think. Yeah, so order date, we're going to use the order ID and order date for the invoice title, but typically you would need to have an invoice number or the invoice date. So, but for now, just to keep it dynamic, we're going to just use the order date, the earliest order date as the invoice date. So we just need to make sure, I think, to hit the auto detect here, just so that the relationships across all of these tables are automatically detected. And you know, for this database, it shouldn't be a problem for us to just do that. And then we just hit OK, and you'll see that it's auto-populated the SQL query for us. So this is going to be our orders table here. If we hit OK, so here we go. So you've imported a data set now with a table with just the columns that you need. Now it's important for efficiency's sake to only import the data that you're going to use to visualize or filter your reports. So as you can see, like we were getting data from various tables, but we're not importing everything. We're just importing the ones that we need because that's sort of more efficient. You know, the less data that you have in your data sets, the less data that the data set needs to pull from the data source. So we need another one for the customers. So we're going to click add datasets again. We're going to name this one customers. And again, we'll select Northwind and then we'll select query designer. From here, we're going to go to the customers. Did I get customer ID from the orders? I need to create that. It's okay. So for now, we're going to get customer ID, company name, address, city, postcode and country, as well as a phone number, because that's the minimum that we need to add in our invoice. So we'll hit OK, because they're all coming from the same table. Shouldn't be any complications there. And here we go. One thing, and you just need to make sure that the customer ID is there, because this is, we're gonna make a relationship to this or filter them by customer ID later onwards. So the last thing that we need to do here is to just create the calculation where we typically create the total amounts, the sales amounts. Instead of doing it as a measure, we can create this as a calculated field. So under orders, if you right click on that, you should have this option add calculated fields, which will open up this section here, the fields. We're going to call this one amount. And then the field source, we're just going to click expression here, which lets us add some values or calculations or some sort of operators. But for this one, we're just going to keep it simple. So it's unit price multiplied by quantity, which hopefully that should work. Now that we've configured the data to start with, let's start to customize how we are visualizing the actual invoice page. So there are a few sections here that I don't want, like for example, this title here, I'm just going to delete that, as well as the execution time. The only thing that I'm going to do is insert a header. So we have a header in the footer. So these two are static on every page. That means that even if your sales table expands or page breaks into another page, it will always show the elements within these sections. So this is a good place to add, for example, your logos, your invoice details, like who you are and who you're invoicing to, or your bank details. You might want to have them on every single page in your paginated reports. So we've just added the header here. So we're going to insert an image. And for this one, I'm just going to name this one logo, and we're going to import the data, import the logo. So for this one, I'm just going to use the Microsoft logo just for this demo. Make it slightly like this. And then we're going to insert a text box at the top here. So we're gonna just call this one invoice number 123, and then invoice, and then we're just gonna add the date here, 12th of Jan 2023. Okay, so let's have a look and preview this. So this is how your report looks like so far. So nothing too crazy, right? So let's start by customizing this a little bit to make it look a little bit more like an invoice. So first, let's just make these a little bit bigger, make the date slightly smaller like this, and then bold this one out. And then we're going to add some expressions to replace some of these values. So this invoice number, for example, we want to just get it from the order number. And for this one, we're just going to look for the order ID, just drag it into there, as well as the dates. So the dates, we're going to use the order dates simply by just dragging it like that. Now, it's in a text box and it's not in a sort of any scope, what we call it. So at the moment, the text box doesn't know where that data is coming from. So we need to be explicit with that, as well as that it's not aggregated. So it doesn't know if it needs to be getting the first value from that list or the last value, or it needs to be summed. So we're going to need to say that or apply those ourselves. The first thing is we're just going to need to change the summarization to look for the first. It's going to make this slightly bigger. And then for the order date, also get the first value. And then another thing that we just need to make sure, I'm just going to go and click expression here, is to specify which data set it's coming from, to be explicit. So we're going to say this one is coming from the orders, which is going to be the exact same thing that we'll need to do to the dates here as well. So right click, expression, orders. So now if you hit run, you will see that it will just take the very first value that it can find from the dataset. Nothing too complex, but the idea is that later on, when we have this option to select the customers, it will only always take the first value that it will find for that customer. So one thing that you might have noticed, the date format, you can actually customize that as well. So under placeholder properties, you will be able to go to the number, and then under dates, just choose the format that you want. So let's choose this one. So if you run that, it will just give you the format that you want. Perfect. So let's expand this header bit here, and let's insert another text box, because we need two text boxes, one for from and one for to. And to just keep it simple and just to speed up this process, I'm just going to copy the data from this template that I've already created here. I'm going to open up the report builder. Here we are. So where it's coming from is always going to be the same, but we want the one where it's going to be a little bit or different. So for that one, we need to get the company information of who we are sending it to. So let's start replacing this with the data from our customers area. So company name, we want address, we want city, we want country, and postcode. We can add the phone number too, but I think you get the idea. So the only thing, like before, we just need to make sure to be explicit with what we want to do with these. So we'll just summarize them by getting the first. And then we just need to go on each one of them and just make sure that we are referencing the data sets that they're coming from. So the customers, like this. Okay, so if you run that, you should be able to get the, or see the first customer in that list. So we're just gonna make sure, just give it a bit more space like this. And yeah, that's it. So now let's customize the footer, which will be basically the same thing. We just want to add this whole bit at the bottom. Make a bit of space there, insert a text box. And we're pretty much ready to work on the middle bit, which is the table matrix format that we want to show. So for this one, you can go to insert and you will see this option here, table. Now you can insert an empty table and start from scratch, but an easier way is to just use the table wizard. So the table wizard lets you choose which dataset you want to build the table from. And if you hit next here, we just chose the order, so it will give you all the available fields in that dataset. We have some options here to build this table. So for now, what we're going to do is just drag in the category name in our row groups because we want them grouped by row. And then we want the product name in the values, unit price, quantity, and the amount. All right, and from here, it will just give you a preview of how that will look like. I don't want the plus or minuses, so I just want to untick, expand, and collapse groups. So it will just give me the full breakdown of the groups along with the products within those categories. And we'll leave everything else as it is. And we hit next. This is the final preview. That's fine. And then we'll just hit finish. So now it's created a nice table for us here. If we hit run, you will see that it's pretty much ready to go. Like the only thing that we need to do is obviously to just update the parameters. But I would like to update some of these, like for example, the formatting of these numbers, which is actually pretty easily done. So if I just check, the unit price and the total amount has these decimal points. So I want to add and change those formats. So we're just going to do the same thing that we did for the headers. So under placeholder properties, number, we're going to go currency, and then we're just going to add the comma separators. We'll just do that for all of these. So number, currency, comma separators. Oh, this one needs to be placeholder properties, currency, commas. The same thing here. So now if you preview this, if we hit run, as you can see now, it gives you those groupings and it shows you the unit price and quantity in the right format. As you can see, if we go to page 2, it's giving us, obviously more and more pages, but even if you go to the next pages, it will always show you the header and the footer, which is exactly what we want. Now, the last thing that we need to do is to add this parameter for our customers so that we are able to filter this data to only show us the orders by customers. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we need to create a new data set. So this is the data sets that we will use for give you the ability to filter the page using a parameter. We're going to just call this one customer parameter. Use the Northwind as our data source. In the query designer, it's simply just the customer table. We just need to bring in two things, the customer ID and the company name. So this will be the fields that we will need to use for the parameter. Okay, so no spaces on the names. So we're just going to remove the space. So now that that data set is set up, we're just going to go on the parameter section here and create a new parameter. We're going to call this one customer. Select a customer. This is the view that your users will be able to see. And available values, we're going to get it from a query, which we've already created, as you saw, customer parameter. The value is customer ID, but what it's showing on the parameter is the company name. So we'll hit OK there. And then obviously we want to filter the whole page. So we need to filter the data sets with the parameters. So because you will see that if I just do it as it is now, you'll see the parameter is available. You'll be able to select something here, but the values won't really update because we haven't really linked it to anything else. As you can see, that's not changing. So we just need to make sure that it's hooked up to the datasets themselves. So under the dataset orders, we're just going to go to dataset properties. And here under filters, we're going to add a filter here to say if the customer ID is equals to the value from the parameter. So the customer ID that the parameter is selected, is it equal to the customer ID from my table? And that will filter the orders table. Need to do the same thing for the customers table. So dataset properties, filters, add an expression customer ID is equals to that value in our parameter. Hit OK. And that's pretty much it. So let's select a customer here, hit view. As you can see, everything is changing. So the invoice number is changing, the date is changing, who is going to, as well as their kind of address, as well as the date underneath. If I choose someone else, view reports, there we go. As you can see, you can now easily create simple invoices using the report builder. And that's really it for this video. I hope that sort of demystifies how you can kind of use report builder in a real world sense, rather than just showing you how and what other functionalities are available in the kind of report builder or paginated reports. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so I know to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.